Hi.
Hello, everyone. Good to see you guys again.
Here, she had a baby.
Yes. So don't mind the postpartum look here, but
You look fabulous.
oh,
Here.
I thank you. Thank you.
So we're here today to talk to you about Session 3, Behavior Management is our focus, and we have 2 documents in the folder. You can follow along with us. First is just called Session 3, Behavior Management Co-Teachers, and it's a document that we're going to actually talk through right now if you want to follow along with us. And then the other document.
The other document is we feel like, honestly, the first part of behavior management is having a conversation with your co-teacher. So we brainstormed a document that has questions that you can use to discuss with your co-teacher to make sure that you guys align on specific issues and align on the system that you guys are going to be using within your class. So we created this as a template. These are just some of the conversations that we started with and had when we started working together. Feel free to add to it or modify, take away whatever you want, but definitely the most important thing to starting in behavior management is having these conversations with your co-teacher to see where you guys align on issues.
And I think to our, that we've talked together now, this is our second year.
Mm-hmm.
That I
Feels
think
longer.
I know, in a good way.
Yes.
But that these change, like depending on the groups of kids you have, depending on the year you have. I also notice, like with us, that as we get closer to June in the region, some of our, like we're a little stricter, I would even say. So I think that these are great. Also, I'm thinking of a couple of groups of folks that are in the class, our class, that have been co-teaching for a while. Not a bad idea to like run through these and just think about what is your strength and weakness and behavior. And I think sort of like our underlying theme for behavior management for co-teachers is that it doesn't want to be a good cop, bad cop situation. I always want Krista to know that I support her decisions as a teacher and that she supports mine, and that the kids aren't going to always come to me because I'm going to say, oh, that's okay. You don't have to worry about that consequence. You want to be on the same line. And I think that's like a K through 12 thing. So kids are very bright, and that if they notice one teacher is less strict than the other, or maybe there's some loopholes with one, they'll expose those.
It's just like parenting. You don't want them to kind of go to one parent to get away with everything. So you don't want them to go to one co-teacher to get away with everything, or it will create that issue also where you don't feel like you're co-teaching because they feel like one teacher is more dominant and that's the teacher they go to ask everything to. So you want them to see you guys both aligning on issues for sure.
So we have 3 questions, and we're going to sort of follow along the document we provided for you on behavior management. 3 main questions we'd hope to tackle today. The first is, what type of management tools are beneficial, and how do you set up a management system that can be implemented as a team? So it's also important, some of us who have TAs, that they're in on the loop. What kinds of behaviors are acceptable, what are unacceptable, so they're also helping too. But I'd say one of the big things we have is just, we started by coming up with a list of rules and policies for common things that we felt like were going to happen. So a couple examples that we've given is that students in high school are going to be late. There's probably going to be somebody who hit somebody in kindergarten. So sort of starting with common issues and brainstorming, like how would you react to that? What would a consequence for that child be? And going through the list of rules. And I think for us a big piece of that is, 1, when it becomes an issue we need to contact families, and then 2, when do we get administration involved. So knowing between you and your co-teacher like what management tools you're going to put in place and sort of using that as a guideline. Does that make sense so far?
Yeah, I think that was perfect. So that's kind of exactly what we did. After we sat down and asked those questions, we picked out those big issues, like even bathroom. How are we going to handle like kids asking to go to the bathroom? How are we going to handle that whole process?
Pencils.
Yeah.
We have a whole policy for if you don't have a pencil.
Absent students. How do we handle when they're absent? How do we get them caught up? What does that look like? And then we literally like typed out all of these rules. So we highlighted on the key issues, came up with a solution together, and then typed it up so that we would have it to refer back to from year to year, or modify or change, and just so we could both look at it and make sure we were on the same page. Especially crucial for new teams who are working together, to have that kind of typed up so you both can refer back to it and remember what you guys agreed on upon maybe like in September, and now it's like June. So I think that's really, really important. What's Dennis saying about that?
Yeah. I think it's important too, as you start to frame policies, one, you have to understand you're probably not going to agree with your co-teacher on everything, which I don't think we always agreed about everything, but it was important to talk about like our non-negotiables. So if you're coming up with a behavior management system, what are some things that you cannot tolerate as a teacher? I cannot handle rudeness. Like when I hear
Right.
students being rude to Carissa or myself, they go outside in the hallway and we have a quiet
Right.
conversation. And that's I think we'll talk about it a little later.
Right.
But that's one of the nice things that we're able to do is sort of recognize for each other. What would you say is your
I feel like one thing that drives me crazy is a weird thing. It's like calling out drives me like insane. So that is like, especially because I'm just one person, and if you're all like screaming my name at the same time, I cannot
Yeah.
get to you. It drives me bananas. So that's something for me. I feel like is something like a not negotiable that I've really had to work through. It doesn't happen so much in our class, but I have another group with my co-teacher and my other co-teacher, and I was like, we have to stop this because they're driving me insane.
So those are things that, like if I know that's something that bothers Carissa, I'm not just going to have her take that on herself. Like I'm going to, sort of stand with her and say, okay, this is something like we as a team has decided is important. So a couple different ways to go about behavior management systems. So I'd say the first thing is thinking about how you're going to record. So we actually have a notebook that we just carry on a binder and a clipboard, and we have that with us everywhere. So I, a lot of times, will like grab the notebook and I'll write down behavior notes. So like I notice Harry's called out 4 times today. I noticed that this person didn't check their cell phone up. We have a cell phone policy where the kids put their phones up and they get points for that.
Yeah, so we just notice if I notice a group is not working well together, I'll write that down. Like this group is really, we move seats and this group is really chatty. Maybe we should consider moving their seat. And of course there are conversations that happen. Like we don't just write this stuff down and then not address it with the kids. But it's more so like if I'm teaching and I'm not seeing something but Stephanie is, we can have those conversations later. It also helps us decide like what is Stephanie just going to deal with while I'm teaching, and what are like issues that she needs to write down and we need to talk about as a group and come up with a group solution. It also just helps too, so that I know like if Stephanie pulls a kid out in the hallway, she'll write down what happened when they were out there. I mean, it doesn't have to be like a page long synopsis of it, but just I pulled Harry in the hallway because I heard him call his partner stupid. Like whatever it is, and then I know that conversation happened. It also just helps because if that behavior continues and I don't know Stephanie already addressed it, there might be a bigger consequence for the behavior continuing or whatever it is. So it just helps keep you guys on the same page because you both can't witness everything. So it helps you both know what's going on.
And I think too, when we talk about behavior management, I think sometimes we think kids that are just acting out who are allowed, but actually this year, and I'm thinking of our second algebra class, and I'm sure you guys have this, we have kids who are just like not starters. So we started noticing in our notebook, oh my gosh, we have 6 kids who would not start our warm-up problem. Like with that, and we prompted them multiple times, we talked to them. So those kids were sort of scattered all over. Now they're in the front row, they're in they're in zones where we're always near them, we're prompting them, because that's like a behavior we want to address. So even if it's like a quiet behavior, the only
Sorry.
Charlie the puppy.
Just give me 1 second. Mailman. Hates the mailman.
Charlie needs some behavior management strategies. Charlie, Chris's puppy. So one thing we started to notice as we were taking down notes is that we had a lot of students who were struggling with just the attention and focusing. So we then were able to obviously talk to each other, but also notify our teaching assistant. So now our teaching assistant, as the kids are working on their warm-up, will specifically go to those kids and make sure that they've started their work. Maybe they don't know how to start the math question. We can give them a hint if they need to, but at least, starting to write their objective for the day, starting to write the question. So I think, one thing when you think about behavior management is we tend to think of like all the loud things that could interrupt class, but also if we have kids that are totally spaced out and aren't doing any of their work, that's also something we want to address and make sure that they're actively engaged in class.
For sure.
So I think, so we sort of mentioned it, but I just want to cover this. I'd say one thing too is, and we talked about groups last time, but this is really more Chris's wheelhouse than mine, but if you are working in that like parallel teach, you're working in a small group, you're working in stations, thinking about how behavior changes based on that. So we have a lot of students who really thrive in a small group setting. We have some who zone out, like I'm thinking of our cashier this year, who like it's almost hostile when you're in a small group with him and you're pointing out what he's doing. Whereas some of our kids really need that small, intense instruction to stay focused.
Right. So just figuring that out, and again, then having conversations about how are we going to come together as a team to address that. What is our solution to addressing that?
Yay.
I also know, before we move on to the next thing, I know Steph talked about too, like, you know, you guys aren't going to agree on everything with your co-teacher. So I just quickly wanted to say, like, how should you handle that? And the biggest issue is, just like you would anything else, like any other relationship, you've got to come to some kind of compromise. But I do think it's important that Steph said, like, well, those non-negotiables. So if it's like not a big deal to you, but it's like huge to your co-teacher, then maybe that's a battle that you let go. So like, for instance, maybe Stephanie doesn't care about calling out, but it's like a really big deal to me. So she says, like, okay, fine, we can follow your system for that. But say like you guys are trying to decide on, I'm trying to think of an issue that would be kind of used for both elementary and high school. Because I was going to say, like, say you both don't agree on like how to handle like absent student procedure. Then you guys can kind of try to figure out, like, where can we compromise here, or who does this matter to more. But definitely trying to come up with a compromise, I feel like, is the best kind of way to go about it, and figuring out, like, where am I okay with maybe like losing the battle. I feel like is important.
And I think also being honest with your co-teacher, like, if, you know, I was trying to think of examples that are K to 12, but like I know, you know, staying in your seat is a big one.
Right.
For younger guys and for us.
Perfect. I was
For
like,
us
I
older,
can't
we
think
have-
of one right this
We
second.
have from K to 12, we got wanderers, kids
Right.
who want to get up, want to do this, want to do that, when it's not appropriate. But I think it's important to, like, if you're, you know, if that's my big thing, is I really want the kids to be in their seat. They need to be focused. There's 22 kids in the seat. We need to keep them all accounted for. And maybe Krista doesn't agree. She can say, you know, that's not something I feel great about, but if it's important to you, then it's something I'm going to go with.
Right.
And it's okay to bring that back up and say, hey, do you remember the other time that I sort of was flexible? I want you to be the same way about this.
Right.
And it's like a give and take. So I think the more that you're able to do that, and at least give it a try. And there's nothing wrong with saying,
Right.
you know, we had an absenteeism policy that I didn't like 100% buy into, sorry.
Right. No, it's okay.
But I said to Krista, like, you know what, let's give it first quarter.
Mm-hmm.
And I have to say, like, I totally buy into it now. The absentee policy is we'll talk about it in a minute, we have a point system where every day students get 6 points based on a rubric, which we'll share with you all. And one of the things that Krista really felt passionate about was that if you were absent from school for whatever reason, you don't get those points. You have to earn those back by coming in during your lunch, study hall, or after school. And then on a case-by-case basis, there are certain kids, like I think we had the death of grandma for one of our students. We excused her from that work. But for the most part, if you have absent kids, you want them to make the work up, particularly in the middle and high school level. So that was something she felt strongly about. And I was like, you know what, I'm going to give on this. But I said, let's just try it for a quarter.
Right.
And then it actually was so awesome because we have all these kids who don't want to lose their points. So they come in after school and they make the work up, which I've never had in my whole career teaching. So I'm glad we tried it. And, you know, that's like a good story. I'm sure there are other examples we can give when things fell apart.
Right. But no, I think that actually was a perfect example to give, because that was somewhere where Stephanie and I didn't align, and we were able to have a conversation. Like, she was able to come with me and say, like, hey, I don't really agree. What is your reason behind this? And I was able to kind of explain my reasoning. So that's another thing too, is that you're able to have those conversations and say, like, okay, I see where you're coming from and why maybe that's difficult. Because Stephanie's point of view was, well, like, how are we not giving these kids points if maybe they really are sick, or maybe, you know, there was a death in the family. And then I was able to say, oh, I see where you're coming from. So maybe we can compromise, and in those one-on-one scenarios, we can just excuse them. But overall, like, I want kids coming in after school to make up the work. I don't want them to think it's just
crazy.
Okay.
It's fab. I mean, I'm excited.
And I had said, like, in my experience, kids do, so let's give it a try. And like she said, it did work out. But if we tried it and say it didn't, and Stephanie was like, you know, they're not staying after now, their grades are dropping, parents are upset, like, can we have a conversation about how to fix this? Then we would sit down and try to fix it. So it's going to take a lot of open-mindedness on both parts. But you, like we said, the overall thing is knowing when to let things go, when to hold on to them, when to kind of fight for what you want and like back up your point, and when to say like, okay, maybe let's try it this way and then we can revisit it. Or so those are all conversations you have to really be open to.
And I would say too, I think we'll probably mention this like 4 times, so maybe I already mentioned, but like there's so much going on in the classroom, and I think sometimes there's a tendency for one of the co-teachers to be like the over-disciplinary. And sometimes like there's a situation that will happen, and I don't know exactly how Carissa wants me to handle it. And I know maybe how I would handle it is that it doesn't always need to be a conference every time.
Right.
If that makes sense. Like between us. So for example, say you have a student who does, who's out of their seat, who's calling out, who's continuing to interrupt, who's interrupting you, who's interrupting other students, which again is like a K through 12
right.
problem. Should I then have a conference with Carissa to talk about how we're going to do it and then discipline the student? Obviously, that would be like the ideal approach, but when you're in the middle of teaching, it's so fast. You can't do that.
Right.
A lot of times, I will just make a decision. Okay, this is the consequence that's going to happen. Okay, I'm sorry, Dennis. You have to go in the hallway. We're going to have a conversation. You have after school. If I hear this, if I hear you interrupting again, you know, and obviously, we're going to have a follow-up. But the main thing that Carissa can do is just agree with my decision. Maybe she doesn't agree that I sent a student outside and I'm having a one-on-one conference with them and he's missing that educational, you know, learning time. But in that moment, if your co-teacher makes a decision, I wouldn't say like interrupting or disagreeing with them
right
in front of the kids, I would not do.
Yeah, that is really going to create kind of like a power struggle between you and the kids, and kids will also pick up on that. Same with the good cop, bad cop kind of scenario. Then they're going to pick up on that situation and be like, oh, well, now I can get away with this behavior.
Yeah, Mrs. Shupp is okay with
right.
me doing this, but, you know, Dr. Conklin won't.
Right. So you really want to support each other and then have those conversations after class. Like,
yep.
And I would also kind of take it like not from, hey, I really didn't like the way you did that, but maybe start with like questioning, hey, why did you pull Dennis out in the hallway and like have him miss instructional time?
Or
before you just say like, I really didn't like that you did that, because that's going to start super negative. Whereas if you try to understand where they're coming from, that might get you a lot farther before you just make them feel attacked.
Yeah, and to be honest, I think one of the biggest issues that I've heard of with co-teachers is one co-teacher does all the discipline, the other does none. And if you are coming at your co-teacher with that kind of attitude where you're always sort of blaming or I don't agree with that, they're never going to want to discipline kids. So it's just going to be on one person, which creates such a bad atmosphere for the classroom.
Right.
So the idea is that, you know, we're working together. And I think even too, like putting it back on, why did you make this decision? Instead of saying it that way, like, how can we help support this student in class so that this doesn't happen again?
Right.
And, you know, making a plan specifically for the child who's struggling. Anything else? Did you want to talk about our points and reward system?
Yeah.
That's your baby, I feel like.
Yes.
Not you have a real baby now.
But in the classroom, that's it, baby. So we came up with a system, and we have revised it many times. But we came up with a behavior rubric. So how the behavior rubric works is there's 6 categories every day. Again, that was a modification we made. It used to be 5. We added a cell phone this year, which is good. So, for instance, I can't list all of the categories off the top of my head, but
I'm gonna put it in the drive though.
So it'll be in there. But for instance, one of them is like, did I put my phone up? I'm trying to think of another one that's a little more behavior.
Check for the kids.
And then, did I work effectively from bell to bell? So, for instance, did I work effectively bell to bell? So if they don't come in, like they're not seated and started right away, that might be a way for them to lose that point. Or if they pack up early, that might be a way for them to lose that point. Again, this is focused in on high school, but you definitely could have a rubric for elementary school. Just changing it, like, did I talk to my neighbor? Like, did I talk during class and interrupt class? Like, things like that you could definitely include for elementary school, maybe making the wording a little more elementary friendly. We even have a talking one on our rubric.
Oh, yeah.
But how this works is there's 6 categories a day, like I said. They grade themselves, and then we also grade them. So in addition to carrying around a notebook, we also carry around like a chart that says points added and points subtracted. So we also felt like we didn't, because they kind of earn those 6 points and then they get taken away. But we were like, well, how are we also going to reward positive behavior or make them not want to like shut down the second they lose a point? You know what I mean? If there's no way to
Earn it back.
balance that
Yeah.
out.
Mhm.
So we came up with the idea of also bonus points.
Which are a hit.
Yes, they love it. So we give bonus points. Sometimes we give bonus points for academic things like, oh, that was great participation, bonus point. Or, oh, great use of vocabulary, bonus point. Or you won Kahoot, bonus point. Sometimes we try to focus more on behavioral things. Wow, you were such a good partner today. I really liked how you helped your table partner. Oh, you stayed and helped us clean up the class.
Yep.
Bonus
I
point.
somebody dropped their calculator in the middle of class and like the batteries went everywhere, and one of our students like ran up and helped them pick up.
Right.
You know, so just being like a good
Yeah.
deed.
So there's
You will.
many different ways to earn bonus points. Again, you want to support each other. So if Stephanie takes away a point, I'm not like, oh no, that's okay. You're not losing that point. Or Stephanie, like Dr. Conklin, I don't think we should take that
Yeah,
point away.
no.
No. Like we support
The
that.
point's gone.
Yeah,
See you, bye.
done. I would not like confront her. But so how the system works is it's a grade in the grade book. So at the end of the week, they technically can have 30 total points based on 6 points a day. So they get a
Or
grade in the grade
more.
book. Yes, or more.
They get bonus points.
But at base, it's got to be 30 points. So they could say they lost 5 points for the week. Now they're getting a 25 out of 30. Say they didn't lose any points and they got 2 bonus points. They're getting a 32 out of 30 in the grade book. Say they just didn't lose any points, didn't get any bonus points, 30 out of 30 in the grade book.
Which I think, not to drop my love, but
No, you're fine.
I think too, as we're meeting and talking with parents, it actually is a wonderful way to track their behavior as well, because you can see kids like, I'm thinking of like our Jose, who has like 34 every week.
Mm-hmm.
He's always on point. He's always getting bonus points. Like you can see, if you get 34 out of 30 points, your behavior is fabulous in class. Whereas if we have kids the other way who are, 22, 23 out of 30, when we meet in conference with parents, we can say, hey, we've recorded that your child, this is what their participation behavior grade is for being focused in class and for doing what they need to do, and sharing that with families. And that's very powerful because it's now made it into like a data point.
We've even had it the opposite way, like negative conversations. So we had a student this year who was really like falling asleep in the beginning of the class. So he was losing his like active participate and working effectively point, and we were able to explain to his mom, he's losing these points. I know too, sometimes people have asked us, do we get like negative feedback from parents based on grading, based on behavior? No, because we explain it like this is their participation grade.
Yeah.
Like it's acceptable to have a participation grade, and your child cannot be participating if they are talking while we're teaching. Like that's you're not effectively participating. You can't effectively be participating if we're asking you to do thumbs up, thumbs down.
Class notes.
Yeah. If we're asking you to do thumbs up, thumbs down, and you're not, that's not, why should you get a participation grade for that? So we're able to kind of justify it to parents that way, and jinx, knock on wood, we have yet to have a parent who has argued with that.
I think the other thing too is that it's part of their classwork grade, which is 20% of their overall grade. So I think being cognizant too, like if we made behavior 70%, that would be for high school ridiculous. So making sure that and I think that's something where you would maybe bring in like a principal or administrator, like what is appropriate, aligning with the other grade level teachers you teach with.
And then, and we did share our behavior system with our principals too. So that's also an idea too, if you want to share with administration in advance, just to make sure that you're going to get that support. They understand what you're doing, why you're doing it. And then if you do have to send a kid out or refer a kid or have a problem for any reason, they understood in advance where you were coming from. And we got positive feedback about that and sharing it with our administration. So it's a grade in the grade book, like we said. We also have invented what we call snack passes. So once they get to 60 points, which would be every 2 weeks,
if they full credit.
Got full credit, but it needs to take at least 2 weeks. Then they get what we call a snack pass. So the snack pass entitles them exactly to what it sounds like. Some kind of snack. We usually go to BJ's and stock up. Things that have been a hit is like packs of gum, Pop-Tarts. Those are like the 2 biggest hits, but you can buy whatever you want for a snack. We also have offered like the non-monetary things, because I know some teachers are not a fan of spending their own money. Totally get it. Totally with you. So we also offer them like homework pass. in the past, this year we've taken a tougher stance on cell phones, so we don't offer it anymore. But we used to offer like
Music passes. They could
music
listen to
passes,
music.
listen to music on their phone. We took that away just because we've taken a tougher stance on phones. But it's an option for teachers out there looking for things that are non-monetary.
But I would definitely say too, like making it like a class reward too.
Right.
You know, if everyone has 60 points by the end of this week, we'll have an extra recess, or we'll
Right.
have time to go outside and play, or to do
Right.
something that the class enjoys. You know,
Right.
extra free time, or you
Right.
know, depending on your grade level.
I was even thinking too, what you could do if you don't want to do the cell phone thing is we sometimes play music when kids are working. You could allow kids with 60 points to be like the DJ and pick the music.
Appropriate music.
Appropriate school music, but you could allow them to pick because we always pick. But that could be an option as well. Or even giving a special privilege, like elementary school kids love eating lunch with their teachers. Like
My
you earn
son's
your
obsessed
points,
with the
you can eat lunch with your teacher.
he likes bringing stuff to the office. When he gets to bring stuff to the office,
Oh
it's like
yeah,
Christmas.
kids like that too. So those are all ways that you like can't spend. You don't have to spend money, but can reward kids. The other reason I really like the rubric is this took Stephanie and I some time to create. So we really agreed, like fundamentally, these are the things we expect from kids. We want them to be doing every day. What should this look like? How would they lose a point? And so since it's a rubric, it's a very easy thing to explain to parents, and it's a very easy way that we don't disagree because we came up with this together.
Yep.
And we understand what that expectation is. Like, you would lose this talking point if you were talking. You would lose actively participating if you are not following along with our thumbs up, thumbs down, if you're not following along with whiteboard practice, if you're not taking notes. Like, we spent a lot of time creating these categories and understanding them. So they were easy to explain to parents, they were easy to explain to the kids, and they're easy for us to make sure that we're on the same page because it's a rubric. So we feel like rubrics are really good ways to measure behavior in elementary school or in high school.
It's also on the Davidson rubric,
Mhm.
but how we're measured, at least in our district for teachers, is one of the things they look at is our students assessing themselves. And that's one of the ways we can point to, hey, students are assessing their behavior. And one of the things that I like, just like with my education, research background, is we have reflection questions at the bottom where students have to write us a sentence about what they learned this week, what they struggled with, what they need help with. And then we also leave a spot where the kids can say, like, write us a note, which is really helpful because you'll have kids say, like, I really had a tough week because my cat died.
Right.
And they would never tell that to you in person, but it gives one more
Opportunity for them to.
talk to you. And again, it's about, we're not just looking at behavior in terms of good and bad behavior, but the overall wellness of the child. So just one more.
And we do allow them to kind of reflect back on their strengths and weaknesses as well too. So it gives them an opportunity to kind of address why they graded themselves the way that they did. But other things that we've heard of in elementary schools, like a CLIP system. But again, these are conversations you have to have because a CLIP system, I know, is very like public discipline. So that's another kind of thing that you and your co-teacher should be discussing. Like, are you more for disciplining kids like in private? Are you more for public discipline? And then the other thing is, we obviously know as teachers, it also depends on the kids. Some kids can handle like, hey, Dennis, stop talking when you say that in front of the whole group. Other kids cannot handle that. Like, they need you to address them privately, like going over their desk and being like, hey, Stephanie, please stop talking.
That's what I would like.
Like, they can't handle you staying in front of the whole class. Like, they can't handle that embarrassment. So some things with your behavior system will have to change. But I've seen, like, where teachers use this CLIP system and there's certain kids that cannot handle, like, moving their clip down in front of people.
Yes.
So just those are things to also note when you have conversations.
Well, and I would say, too, with the public, moving a clip up, moving a clip down, really delineating, like we sort of talked about, like, when do you contact a parent, when do you contact an administrator, making sure that you're on the same page. And I think, too, something to think about, too, is we sort of have this bonus point system as a way for kids to earn back points. So maybe you have a bad day on Tuesday, you come in, and Wednesday's a great day. And that's sort of something we look for, is if kids have a bad day, we try to look for ways to give them points. But also, I'd say for our younger kiddos, if you move a clip down, do you reset it every day? Are there ways that kids can earn it back up? Or is the kid going to be moved down for the whole rest of the day? And if that's your policy, that's fine, but making sure that there is some way for a fresh start and like a new
Right.
chance for every kid so that they're not like, for the whole week or the whole day just sort of down.
Right. I
Does that
agree.
make sense?
But I will say too, the other reason that is another positive about the rubric that just made me think is that we can delineate between like kids who can handle it, and we can say in front of the whole class, hey, you're losing a point for that behavior, or you can more subtly, quietly go over and say, hey, you're losing a point for that behavior.
Yeah, or
So
even
that-
talk to them after class
yeah.
and say, hey, we just want to tell you,
You lost
did
a point
lose a
today
point, and
because
if you
of
want to
this,
earn it
this, and
back.
Right. So it just allows a lot of flexibility, and it doesn't concrete you down to this is a whole class discipline system, or this is like, a private discipline system. We're allowed to kind of bounce back and forth with it. I will say too, I know a lot of elementary teachers that use Class Dojo, again, more public discipline, but just finding, like, coming to your co-teacher and saying, hey, I have these ideas on how we can handle discipline. We also created at the beginning of this year, and we haven't really had to refer to it because we have great kids this year. Not going
Don't
again.
even say
Yeah.
anything.
Not going again. But we also had brainstormed, like, what if this rubric system isn't working? What other methods can we put in place for kids? So having that idea too, like, what if I create a clip system and kids don't give a crap about moving their clip down? What am I going to do now to fix
You said that.
that system? Because that happens. Like, we've had kids that are like, I don't care about this rubric. So what are now you going to do for them? So just having those ideas put in place as well.
I like that. All right, well, I think we're pretty close to wrapping up. We talked a lot about our third question, which is how can co-teaching teams utilize data analysis, observational. So we mentioned the notebook. We mentioned having like a specific grade based on behavior and participation, recording data. So we have students that we do record their behavior, which our teaching assistant helps us a lot with. And one of the big things too that I think has helped us a lot this year is that we've been trying to, if it's behavior specific related, we try to make the phone call to parents together or have a conference together, just because then we're all on the same page. I think it also helps parents to feel a little bit more supported in that, hey, we want what's best for your child. We're here to support you. It's a team. It's a team approach. It's not, we notice this behavior and it's wrong, It's more, hey, here's the things that we could do to support your child. How and what can more could we do, or what suggestions do you have? So I think it's a little frustrating to try to find the time. I think we've used a couple of our planning periods, but it really does seem to help deal with those issues.
And helps the parents to see, like, we're both the teachers, we're both here to support them. Please contact us both. And like we said, and like we all, takes the village to raise a child. We all
it does
want to be here.
Now you
to,
know, because you have a baby.
We all, and it's taking a village, trust me. But we all want to help your child. Like, we all want to be on the same page. While Stephanie was talking to it, I also thought about, like, as much as you can, if it's a behavior issue, we would recommend calling and avoiding email as much as possible. Sometimes, you only have an email for a parent or whatever the situation is, or they've requested to only be contacted through email. But a lot of times we know those word tones can be hard to read, and parents can become much more upset in email. But if you are ever emailing, it's also important that you both be CC'd in the email. We sign everything, even if I'm writing the email. I always put like best or thank you, Carissa and Stephanie. And Stephanie does the same thing, like Stephanie and Carissa. So even if she wrote it by herself, like, she CC's me in on it and signs both of our names to it.
Yep. And again, it's reinforcing to the kids that this isn't just my classroom or Carissa's classroom. It's both of our classrooms, and we're both going to be there to help you.
So like we said, like, recording any of those data trends can help. And then we just kind of use them to talk about it. So for instance, if I'm writing down, this partnership really isn't working, then we talk about it after and say, we address whatever we can in class. Like, maybe I tell the kids, hey, you're losing a point for today, or whatever I decide how I'm going to handle it. And then after, we talk about it and say, look, this group is really chatty. Are we moving their seats? Are we giving them one more try? What do we want to do as a group? And just so you know, like, this is how I've already addressed it with her. So that way we both know what's already been done, and we come up with a mutual solution together of what we're going to do to fix it.
Okay. Well, I think we'll wrap it up. Is there anything else?
I think we're pretty good.
So just to review it, and I'll include this in an email, but we're gonna post this video for you all to watch at your leisure.
Mhm.
We have a bunch of documents in there that we've talked about, and I labeled them all session 3 just so you know where to look. But our plan is next Monday, the 27th. Is that right? The 27th? To be online from 5 to 6 just to facilitate a conversation, answer questions if you have them. I'm definitely going to be there. Chris is going to do her best, but no pressure, my dear, right?
No,
And
I
then-
will be there at least for as much as I can.
Yeah, that's okay. Do what
Even
you
if
can
it
do.
can't be the whole thing.
But again, come with questions. Come with a bunch of folks came to the last webinar and said, well, this is what's not going well. This is what's going well. And it's not just about us answering it, but you really have a whole team. So if there's some reason you can't make that time, please let us know. We'll find an alternative assignment for you.
Perfect.
Anything else?
All
No.
set. Thank you guys. See you soon.
Bye.